I'm being joined now by energy lawyer and the chairman, Oil Trading and Logistics Africa, Mr. Emeka Akwabogo. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Akwabogo.
Thank you very much for having me.
So how do you see these planned strategies by the DPR, aligning with the vision of other regulatory agencies in the oil and gas sector like the NNPC?
Well, I think that it really is consistent with the new vision which the government seems to have post-COVID. I guess what has happened is that COVID has shown everybody that we've got to be a bit more prudent and disciplined in our operations. We've got to approach the governance of the industry from a point of view that sees, that is more detailed, more granular in its appreciation of the key elements that define and drive costs. So the DPR is simply more or less mirroring what the NNPC has said as far as costs within the industry are concerned. And this is very important. If you make reference to a note which the GMD of NNPC made recently, where indicated that in the joint venture operations which the NNPC has with its partners, in some instances, the costs of production are up to $93 a barrel. And these are in cases where, and he says that while you have that happening, by the same token, that's for some companies, by the same token, other companies have as low as $9 per barrel. So you see that there is such a huge difference in the operating costs relative to different companies that obviously there is certainly something wrong. So costs are the key driver for high costs are a key driver of inefficiency, and also the other way around.
Now, okay, yeah, the NNPC GMD has, of course, often talked about the fact that there is need to bring down the cost of production, and the target is that they have to get the cost of production down to about $10. But how achievable is that, and how can that be achieved?
I mean, I think the focus is on discipline. Of course, in how it can be achieved.
When you talk about discipline, what do you mean? Now, first of all, we have to understand what even drives these costs. Yeah.
So there is a segment which has to do with the operational patterns of the joint venture operators themselves. Then also there's an aspect which has to do with issues which government is in control of. So one of the key cost drivers in Nigeria in recent time, of course, has been security. So security is important, and government must take efforts, must make the efforts to ensure that the cost of security is reduced by ameliorating those events which cause insecurity in the first place. There are also community issues which are crucial, which must be dealt with. So government on its side must set the example by dealing with those aspects which are within its control. Then it must be disciplined in its relationship with the joint venture partners to ensure that the joint venture partners keep down the costs. So you've got costs issues arising from the range of the supply chain within the production value chain. So all operators within the industry have to also work within the nature of the environment which we have. You just finished a report where Lagos has been said to be the third most expensive city to live in Africa. Lagos is reflective of Nigeria, and we have a situation where we've got runaway costs attending most of our operations. So it's important that from a macro point of view, the government is a bit more prudent, but more importantly, in terms of governance and dealing with those granular issues that affect day-to-day living, then we also should be very, very mindful. The ports, for instance, the ports, if you go to the ports are congested. Apapa, you can't get a truck into Apapa or out of Apapa within 1 week. You can't. It's simply impossible. So under such circumstances, it's impossible for costs to be low. So what needs to happen is that across the levers of government and across the indices which make the industry tick, there must be greater efficiency.
Right. Okay, now let's come down to the downstream sector. The issue of petrol price control has become a major challenge. So just wondering why we are yet to see full deregulation in that sector.
Well, I'm sure that's a question that we'll put to the government, to the ministry and to PPPRA. But what has been said by the government is that they are mindful of the interest of consumers. They do not want the marketers of petroleum products to run away with prices which are outside the control of the consumers. That's a fair position, if you may put it that way. But of course, it's important that we have full deregulation. The reason is simple. Full deregulation unlocks value for government, unlocks value for the private sector. It unlocks value for the consumers because you see improved efficiency across the value chain. It indeed probably will lead to lower prices when you have competition which is running through.
Where does the PIB come in here?
PIB is important because the PIB needs to set out the framework, the legal framework, which ensures that you have full deregulation. Currently, you have a legal framework under which even if the government desired to, the government would be acting against the law if it doesn't follow price control measures which are in existing laws. The Petroleum Act has price control measures. The PPPRA Act has price control measures. There's also Price Control Act. So the point is, the PIB will reset the mandates of these organizations and remove issues relating to price caps. So the PIB is important along those lines.
All right, looking at these strategies as outlined by the DPR, do they also align to what is, or probably what should happen in the downstream sector?
Well, to an extent, yes. The DPR's outline has is largely towards the upstream as far as costs goes. But costs are also applicable to downstream. Of course, there are other parts of their measures which include portfolio resetting and strategic partnerships. Now, these are all very important. For partnerships, for instance, in the downstream, you need very important partnerships at this time. You need partnerships relating to benchmarking of pricing globally. You need partnerships relating to integrating operational models, because we have a situation where truly many individual marketing companies, in view of what has happened in recent time, really cannot cope as they are individually. So there probably will be the need for mergers within the markets and increased partnerships between government and the private sector on key elements. But at the end of the day, these things are important to the extent that they help the market to reset and help it to become more efficient in its operations.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Akabog. Let's just hope we get it right eventually in the oil and gas sector.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Emeka Akabog is an energy lawyer and, of course, the chairman, Oil Trading and Logistics of Africa.